And we can welcome you, Bob, to Synseligaen, the Norwegian, what should I say? Podcast about football, Norwegian football.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, lovely to have you. And your background, like Howard says, like with agency, with scouting, you have a little about law and right everywhere, about a lawyer also.
So the way I started out was, of course, I played football in high school, what we call soccer here in the States, and I went on to play at a pretty good Division II college. Had a very short career there, suffered an injury, transferred schools. Then I coached at the university, the women's team at the university where I went. I coached there for 5 years. We actually had a brand new female program. It's when a program in the United States came into effect called Title IX, which meant that there had to be equal representation of women in sports at the collegiate level. So the school that I went to actually had to get rid of their men's team. And it is the school that I transferred to after my injury. It actually tried to recruit me when I was in high school. When I went there, the coaches knew me, so I became the goalkeeping coach there and then an assistant coach, and had a pretty successful career. Developed a couple of All-American players, won some championships, went on to law school, came out of law school, and went to work for a major law firm in Philadelphia. Worked there for a few years, almost 3 years, but it was very clear after the first couple of months that I wasn't cut out to work in the corporate world, because I've always kind of marched to my own drums, always been my own man, a little too punk rock for corporate America, far too punk rock for football, but that doesn't stop me. So I left there and started my own practice and got into immigration law.
I see.
And you said punk rock, Bob. You also have a history with playing music.
Oh yeah, but we're not going to talk too much about that today. Yeah, I toured for many years, but that just my overall attitude is very much DIY, do it yourself. It's very much, I'm an American, so America isn't quite what it used to be, but we really do have, just like your Viking ancestors. Were travelers. They were people that explored. I come from a long line of people that explore and go out and do their own thing. So starting my own practice was always going to happen. I got into immigration law, and then what happened from there is one of the guys who used to coach me in high school, who played for Bolivar at one point in Bolivia, had started a local club here. And so I started off as their goalkeeping coach, and as time went on, I eventually left his organization, and we created our own organization, which became one of the top youth development clubs in the Northeast United States. Now, this was before the MLS started to bring their programs into play. So right as I was getting out of youth coaching, the MLS was starting their programs, what they now call MLS Next, and some of their other youth programs. Because American sports, as I'm sure you're aware, they're not like European sports. The Pittsburgh Pirates, the baseball team, they don't have little league teams that play through the Pirates trying to become professionals. So we were trying to do something very different. And I was lucky enough to bring in coaches to come work for us that used to work at Manchester United. And when we first started going to Africa, which was in 2010, I had a staff from Manchester United, Rotterdam, who else am I thinking? Guti from Real Madrid. We had a number of top coaches that came along to help us to start doing the scouting, because the project that I started here in the States through our club, which is called USTA, was a nonprofit Christian organization. Basically, in the U.S., if you want to play football here, if you want to play soccer, it's a wealthy kids game. It's not like it is around the rest of the world. It's a pay-to-play.
It's like for the rich kids almost.
It is for the rich kids. So what I did, because I was surrounded by so many good Christians who had done well in life, we created some endowments for players that did not have money. So again, as an immigration attorney, and without getting into the politics of immigration, because at the time it wasn't a big deal, as an immigration attorney, I was able to reach out into the local community, and I built squads that were based basically 3/4 of Americans and 1/4 of immigrants. And we went on to, my basement is filled with trophies and winners' medals, but it wasn't about the trophies and the winners' medals. I was traveling around Europe at the time, going from different club to different club, trying to learn how to coach football in the European way, because it was clear, if you just look at the U.S. history, that we have no idea how to develop players. We know how to develop great athletes. We're incredible at athletics. but we do not know how to develop footballers. So we brought that model here. And as that happened, there was a family called the Tando family that I became very close to. And they invited me to start working with local African kids. And eventually it ended up taking me to Ghana and Africa in 2010, like I said, with an amazing staff of real professional coaches, men who had developed some of the top players at the time. I mean, you know, guys like Danny Welbeck, Ravel Morrison, these were all guys that were at United right as the best class of United was coming through. And of course, when you're bringing anybody from Madrid, you know the history Madrid has in scouting and developing players. So I had a world-class team around this fat American guy. Go ahead.
No, just keep going. I'm
yeah,
wondering
no,
about
please, your question. I'm
something
rambling.
later. Yeah, no, just keep going.
We like to hear you talk, Bob. So just continue.
That just means like I'm gonna have a follow-up question to it.
Got it. Just want to make sure I wasn't cutting you off.
No.
But we ended up, so it was actually in January of 2010, without getting into the whole story of how we got there, we expected to show up at the Essapong Stadium in Sekindi Takoradi in Ghana. We expected to show up and to work with about 200 players. Well, we had over 3,000 players show up.
That's amazing. But if you're coming to like Africa 2010, you mentioned Guti, you mentioned Danny Welbeck. How was it in 2010 to come and see how things work in African continent like 16 years ago?
So it was a university education in football, this first trip, honestly. I learned more in this first trip about football than I had in all of my prior years. And when we went to Ghana at that time, and we have lots of footage from it. Again, we were with these top coaches, and it was so moving to them that one of the coaches, Phil Brogan, who's now at Manchester City, is one of their coaches. After being United for 12 years, he left to come join our program in the United States so that we could develop this international program. And because when we were in Ghana in 2010, this is no exaggeration. It was like the Brazil of Africa.
Okay.
Everywhere you looked, there were players of such high quality that, again, I was an outsider in football. I believed that football worked the way that American sports work. It was a meritocracy. Yeah. If you're the best, you're going to get drafted. If you're the best, they're going to come and find you. So all of a sudden, out of these 3,000 players, we got it down to about 150 players that we started to work with, and about 50 of them that we were housing there at the stadium for a couple of years. But what I very quickly found out was, despite the fact that we had players that were substantially better than many of the players that we were competing against, or players we were scouting, or players I was seeing in Europe, because I wasn't friends with the old boys, what we call the old boys network, because I wasn't involved in the nepotism in Europe, we could not place these players. So we had one boy named Emmanuel Mensah, and he went on, and another player called Courage Perkison. They both went on to have decent careers. Emmanuel's been around all around Eastern Europe. He's now in Saudi Arabia. But this boy, when he was scouted by guys like Phil and Guti, when they saw him, they were telling me, this kid is good enough to go into United or Madrid right now. And so with Mensah, the first place I took him was to Honvéd in Hungary, and they offered him a deal. But we also had an offer from Elche in Spain. Now, at that time, the agent that was helping us do the deal at Elche was Tim Howard's former agent. So we all know Tim Howard, the American goalkeeper. Yeah. So what ended up happening was we didn't know any better. We had invested our money. We were treating this like any other business. Now, we wanted to help these kids. We were running a nonprofit, but we had to make sure that our for-profit and nonprofit were both taken care of. So we never realized that in this industry, it's basically whoever takes the player to the club, that guy gets half, and then we get half. We just thought, well, we've expended hundreds of thousands of dollars through developing these programs for these kids. We want more money for this. You will give you 25%, take 75%, and they told us to F off. That's enough, please. Sorry, my dog is in the background whining. But the guy just told us to F off, and the deal evaporated just like that. And of course, we didn't have any contacts at the club. And this is when I first started to learn about football and nepotism.
I see. So the interesting thing is like you get a little shocked about the culture difference between American way of doing it versus the African way of doing it when back at that time.
Well, this wasn't even African. This was actually a Spaniard who represented Tim Howard at the time. I believe he was from Spain, but he was from somewhere in Europe. I don't remember exactly. But it was the difference in football and how corrupt and nepotistic football was. It isn't a meritocracy.
No.
And that was that's what shocked me.
Okay.
And it took me years to figure out that I could not change it, even though I wanted to.
And why, Bob? Did you wanted so bad to go to Africa and scout? Why did you choose Africa and Ghana specifically?
All right. So at the time, and this will get into some of my background, but at the time, this was 2009. 2009 was the first time I ever traveled out of the country, and really traveled out of the country. I'd been to Canada and Mexico, but I'd never really traveled. So I went to Portugal. We took a team of American players to compete in the Mundialito. And we did very well. We made it to, I believe we made it to the round of 32 and got knocked out by, I believe at the time in that, because we went there a few years, we got knocked out by one of the bigger teams in Portugal. So then from there, I had an invitation through a Christian friend of mine to go to Brazil. So I ended up traveling to Brazil, to Rio de Janeiro, to a little town called Pau Grande, which means big stick. And it's a little cul-de-sac of a town. And it is where one of the most famous and probably the best players that none of us talk about grew up. And his name was Garrincha. In fact, anytime Garrincha and Pele played together, people don't realize this, Brazil never lost. It was only when they weren't together because of injury or because of Garrincha's drinking and alcohol problems that they would lose matches. So I ended up in Brazil, and that was the first time that I ever saw real poverty. So I grew up in the U.S. My family was poor growing up, but we were upwardly mobile. Both of my parents became educated, both became ministers, both graduated from Princeton. So I had an upwardly mobile trajectory out of poverty. But the poverty that I saw as a child was nothing compared to what I saw in Brazil. And it moved me. It broke my heart in many ways. And I felt a real calling to do even more to help impoverished people. So I came back from that trip, and I remember this only because it was around my father's birthday. I came back from that trip, and I was talking to my wife about what I had seen and about feeling like I need to do more. At the time, I was practicing law. I was very busy practicing law, running a football academy, and now I want to expand internationally. So my wife and I started talking, and I fell asleep that evening. And I literally had a dream that Christ told me to go to Africa. This was in November. I started to make phone calls, sending out emails, trying to reach out to anybody that I could to see who might be interested. And by the time we left for Africa, I think it was January 5th of 2010, between November and January 5th, 2010, between the various companies, including Puma, we got some stuff from Nike. We had lots of people that ended up giving us money for the trip. We had raised more than $30,000 for this trip. And so we traveled there with this great staff, and we ran this incredible program. And my eyes were opened up to what Africa is. And I started to have my eyes open up about the truth of how corrupt football is, and how the majority of people that work in football are generally immoral, unethical, and unscrupulous. And so, but this was just my introduction. I was still very hopeful. I thought the American way could overcome the corruption. And I learned over the years that it doesn't quite work the way that I would have wished it did.
No, one of the most difficult things to change in the world is culture difference. You know what I mean? It's almost impossible. Take generations, you know? So, but
absolutely.
I have a question for you. You say that you talk to your wife, and then you fall asleep, and then you get almost like a sign from God that this is the right direction for you. Do you have any Christian backgrounds from early days, or is just the way of talking?
When I was growing up, my father was attending Grove City College, which is one of the most conservative colleges in the country, with an eye toward becoming a minister. So my father was called to the ministry when he was 15.
Okay.
So he ended up going from there to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. And then from there, he went to Princeton, where he got his doctoral degree.
I see.
So yeah, I grew up in the church, but I promise you, in 2010, when I was in Africa, I was not living like a Christian. So I had all of the accoutrements, but I was very much living as my own God.
Yeah, I see.
Right.
If you compare it today, what Africa is today in football, how will you say the scouting and agency in Africa in 2025, 2026 versus 2010?
Okay, well let's just talk about African. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Håvard. Go ahead if you want to follow up.
Yeah. Also, we have to talk about this, of course, later when you have to tell us about the diamond you found there, of course. But tell us first about the difference between like this time we went there and how do you see it now, and how many things you have learned on the way working in Africa.
Okay, well, I could write 50 volumes on everything I've learned about Africa from the times that I've spent there. So I'll try to keep it short. But like I said, when we went there in 2010, I was blown away by the level of talent. And I don't just mean one player here or there. You could basically throw a rock and find a player that was as good as the players that I had seen at the clubs I was visiting in Europe. And I wasn't visiting small clubs. I was visiting clubs like United. I was visiting clubs like Bayern Munich. I was visiting clubs like Benfica. You know, there was a gentleman, I don't want to mention his name just because we no longer work together, but there was a gentleman in the United States who used to run an amazing program, a very good program. And in the summers, what would happen is the top players in the United States would apply to come to his camp between the ages of 11 and 15. And then he would bring over the youth coaches from all the top clubs across Europe. At that time, if you were to name a top club, they would bring over 2 of their coaches. And then after the first 2 days of games, watching the players, each club would select the players. And then they would train those players in their club's methods. So for 2 weeks every summer, for years, I was getting to go and sit and watch these guys on a daily basis and then go out for drinks with them and then became friends with them. Then they would come stay at my house or visit me and my parents. And I got to know them not just as football guys, but as actual men. We became friends and they shared so much information with me. So now I'm in Africa. And what I was expecting in Africa, I expected we would find maybe 5 to 10 players that would be good enough for us to bring over to the United States to join our academy here and be part of basically a youth exchange program, an educational exchange program, which we were trying to work out with the local Catholic archdiocese or diocese. So, but when we got there, I mean, we saw kids. Again, I was with guys who were, again, imagine this is Manchester United 2010.
I see.
This is Real Madrid 2010. And these guys are going to me, Bob, I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to narrow this down. We only have so much budget. We have too many players. These kids are such high quality. And while we were there, we were just so blessed. Every time we ran into a roadblock, we didn't have enough beds. All of a sudden, somebody in the local community would come up and here's another 50 mattresses. We didn't have enough food for the day because not that we didn't have the money for it. They just didn't have enough people to prepare it. And then somebody else came and brought catering. So there were all these really amazing things that were happening around this event. And now you're asking me to compare it to today. And the fact of the matter is there's no comparison. When I had spoken to Håvard about doing this, I wanted to title this podcast, The Death of African Football.
Yeah.
And the problem we have is I'm an outsider, so I'm not an African. Now, I feel very African in many ways because of my experiences there and how close I feel to the Ghanaian culture. But there are things I'm going to say that many of my African friends would disagree with because they're so close to it, they can't see the forest for the trees. But in 2010, when you were in Ghana, everywhere you looked, there were dozens of young kids fighting for a ball, trying to play. There were not a lot of clubs. There were not a lot of academies. If there were, they would get together maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and then they would go play their games on the weekend. And the rest of the time, those boys were playing football 7 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then And we were now at this time Right to Dream, which of course is a massive organization. They were starting up there, and they had a foothold because he had been backed by United and then was eventually backed by Man City, and of course he burned those bridges and he no longer has them. But what was happening then is that was the first. Right to Dream was one of the first academies there that started to put together a European model. So what ends up happening from between 2010 and now is now when you go to Ghana, you don't see kids playing in dirty. You don't see kids playing in dirty parking lots. You don't see kids playing in the broken down fields. You don't see kids everywhere on a ball just in the street. You don't see it because everybody is a part of an academy. So what's happened is you have the Europeans came to Africa trying to find players, essentially export the raw materials to Europe. Then they thought, well, hey, why don't we create our own academies? So instead of being the agents, we can actually own the player rights for these players. We can now do the registrations. Excuse me, out of the room. Come on, out of the room, girls. Sorry, my dogs are making too much noise. Out of the room. Come on, good girls. So
it's always the dogs, not the cats.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that these Europeans come in. Again, I have no problem with capitalism. I'm a huge fan of capitalism. But they came in and they wanted to be able to own the registration rights. And so they created academies. And then what happened is the locals who were educated or had money saw what the Europeans were doing in trying to set up these academies. So they tried to replicate it. So essentially you have a bunch of people that are trying to create a system in a culture where it won't work because they don't have the history or the education. You have guys who are now, instead of kids being on the ball 8 hours a day, they're on the ball an hour and a half a day. And they're being coached on tactics rather than working on their skill sets that they have whenever we play in the streets. Because that's what we all know. When we play with our friends, everything's 1v1. Everything's 1v1. And that was the thing about these African players. They were, Ghanaians in particular, they were so comfortable receiving the ball and turning with the ball, changing direction with the ball. It was like, I can't, it was breathtaking to watch at the time. Now, I was last in Ghana a year and a half ago. We still represent some players there. And I went to see one of them play in one of the championships that was being held, the African Championships. And even watching that African Championship, okay, this U20 Championship, the level was terrible. I watched at least 30 games while I was there. I didn't see one player that I went, wow, there's a fantastic player. And it's because they're being miscoached and mismanaged. And then you have the business side of it, which of course you're talking about a culture which is both low trust and low education. So it's a very easy place to take advantage of people. And we see it happening on a daily basis. So the main differences I see now is that the European model they've tried to adopt it for purposes, for financial purposes, and the development of the African player has dropped substantially. Listen, think about it. Think about in 2010, you have Michael Essien, okay? You have Samuel Eto'o. You have Didier Drogba. You have Yaya Toure. You have Kolo Toure. I mean, we could go on and on and on with the top African players. Where are they now? Where are they today? They don't exist. And people, my African friends will say, well, that's because it's corruption.
Anymore. It's not the same level. You can see, of course, Africa still have good players. But I agree with you. It's not at the same level that it used to be.
Yeah, it's not. And of course they're going to have players because there are, how many hundreds of millions of people on the continent. And again,
in Nigeria alone is 260 million people.
Yeah, exactly. But where are
70% of America?
And this is the thing. Nigeria, is like you said, like 250 people or something.
250 million people. How many is in America? 320?
Yeah, I think it's actually 360 right
360,
now with all the immigration we have.
If you put it up like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also, of course, it's a lot of corruption and it's also a lot of politics. And actually, one of the best players hardly don't ever play at the national team. And of course, inside the team, it's also a lot of politics that who knows the right guy,
Yeah.
It's money changes hands, and this is what I was going to say to you, Hobart. You're right. The corruption has an effect, but the corruption, even if the corruption was gone, we still don't have the same level of player because the developmental systems have changed. And until they return to their grassroots developmental systems, or unless we import all of the European infrastructure, it's going to stay this way. And what, Johan, I don't know how much experience you have with African football, but when Hobart's talking about the corruption, what he's talking about is like the national teams. Most of the kids in the U17s and the U20s and the U15s, people are paying for them to be there. Okay? I will give you an example. Right now, I have one player that we've been working on taking to Norway for about 6 months. Okay? He turned 18 in November. So we knew we would have to wait for this upcoming preseason. Very good left-footed center back. We spent dozens of hours and a lot of financial and time investment in getting this guy prepped to come to Norway to play hopefully in the Obos. I wake up about 2 weeks after his 18th birthday, and I receive a notification that he's been called up for the under-17 national team. So explain to me how that happens. So now I have to make a phone call. And what I find out is that people inside the federation knowingly, willingly, and wantonly, illegally changed this boy's date of birth so that he could play for the under-17s. It's just like the 2013 Nigeria national team that won the under-17 World Cup.
I see the point. So then he's an even more bigger talent because then he's 16 years old in a 18-year-old body. You know what I mean?
You got it. So that Nigerian team that won the 2013 World Cup in Dubai, which I was there for that tournament because I represented some of the players that were there. Every player in that team was overage. Every single player. I have physical documentation to prove it, but nobody cares.
Is that always been a problem, like back in 2010 and the 90s and today? Because you're talking
in Nigeria,
about...
it was a bigger problem in Nigeria then. Now it's a bigger problem in Ghana.
Oh, yeah, bigger
but it's
problem.
everywhere. It's everywhere in Africa.
Yeah.
Rob, I just have to ask you a question about all these things. Do you think also that they are like, in a way, are forced to do this? Because if you are like 20 years old, you're never going to get to Europe. Your career is basically over if you don't get picked before you're 20 years old.
Okay, so you're asking, you just said, are they forced? And I guess my response to that would be is anywhere that there is poverty and people are trying to escape poverty, they're going to try to take shortcuts or take advantage of systems. Okay, that happens, and I understand that. The problem with this is the young men whose dates of birth are being changed. Okay, they're not the ones doing it. It's the people around them. So then what they do is the date has been changed. They have a record of that. Now when the player tries to travel, if that player doesn't do exactly what they're told by the people who have that evidence, they'll just destroy their careers. So, recently we have a player, and, Hobart and I have discussed it. We have a player that after we started representing him, I became aware of the fact that he's an age cheat. Somebody forwarded me all of the information, and they were looking for me to basically pay them some blackmail money. And I said, I don't care. Put it out there to the whole world. I don't care. I had nothing to do with this. And I'm not going to protect the player because players, listen to me, players will never protect you. The one thing I learned in football is that one of the many things I learned is that you can never trust a player. Okay? Because once they start making money, once they start having their own freedom, and especially these kids that come from cultures that are low trust and they don't have freedom because the adults above them bully them into doing everything. As soon as they have the moment to rebel, they're going to rebel. And if there's a brighter, shinier object that they can run to, they're going to run to it and leave you behind. So I used to spend literally tens of thousands of dollars to defend players whenever they would get into difficulties. And we stopped doing that now. We won't do it because it's a waste of an investment.
Remind me of the movie with Sean Connery, if you put up a little other mindset here, Bob. A movie I look in I think it was in the, late 90s, 20 years ago. I understand the comment now. I didn't understand it when I was a young boy. He said, all the young boys, young and dumb and full of cum. They do as they want anyway. So
Yeah.
is almost like the same thing. They
Well,
flaggle with the wind. You know what I mean?
well, I represent at one point I represented one of the most famous young players in the world. Okay, again, fat American guy. I go to Nigeria. I make a nighttime trip there. It's an incredible story about how I ended up getting the boy to sign with us. We take the boy to Manchester City. Really amazing deal, changed his life. I left my own family every other week. I would leave for a week to go take care of the player. And the player eventually just threw us to the wolves, and didn't just throw us to the wolves, did it in such a disgusting and immoral way that it resulted in, 4 years of litigation, which we eventually came out on top of. But it was proof to me that it didn't matter. And again, this was somebody who, if you read our history of communication, if you heard about the way that he talked to me prior to him screwing me over to go to a larger agency, which, by the way, had he have come to me and said, "Hey, Bob, this huge agency wants to represent me. I'd really like to move," I would have sat with him and that agency and worked out a deal, and it wouldn't have been a problem. But instead, they try to do it the African way, which is very dirty and corrupt. And that's not to say that other places in the world aren't dirty and corrupt. But again, we're talking about West Africa, which is a low trust society. And that's what you're dealing with. And so you deal with that on top of everything else that goes along with the money involved in football, and things can get ugly. They have attempted to kidnap me. They have actually kidnapped players of mine in Africa. I've had guns drawn on me. We've been chased. It's football is not what everybody thinks it is. It is nothing more than a system to move money around for people that are already wealthy.
Very interesting. So my mindset thing, Bob and Howard, about trust. Because if you look at the societies in the world, if it's America or Norway or Finland or England or Nigeria or Ghana, wherever, it can be which country in the world. You know what I mean? If they have taken the record of the trust in the country, that means like how you trust your president, how you trust your government, how you trust the system in Estland or Spain, wherever, we're all over the world. The more trust you have to the government system or other people, like you want me well, Bob, and you, Bob, want me well back, you know what I mean? You more trust there is in the country, you better the economy and the people health are. It's
exactly.
very, very interesting. If you have trust to people, you don't gonna fuck around with me, Bob, and Bob not gonna fuck around with me. We trust each other. You know what I mean? If you do that as people, we have more health and better economy in the world. And that says something, because you mentioned the trust so many times.
Well, because trust matters, because there's also something that we're talking about. When we talk about high trust societies, we're also talking about personal integrity and personal honor.
Correct.
So if I were to harm you, okay, not only would it be a violation of the agreement between us, people in my community would look down on me and I would be shunned for it. But we no longer shun people. We no longer shame people. And the other problem you have in Africa is people don't understand the value and the power of a contract. So you have them sign contracts and they'll go, we want you to throw that contract out. I'm not going to throw it out. Well, I'm telling you to. I don't care if you tell me to. The contract has these dates. It has these terms. These dates and terms are going to be fulfilled. Oh, no. So then you end up having to sue people that don't even understand what it means to be sued. They don't understand the cost of litigation. All right. And so when they sign those papers, it doesn't mean anything to them because they're low trust. So to them, they're just, here, sign this. Who cares? It doesn't matter to me. Okay. But in the cultures we come from, a contract matters. And what they have to understand is once you get to Europe, that contract is going to matter in Western Europe. It might not matter in Africa, in East Legon, but it will matter when you get to Europe, and that's where we can chase you. But who wants to spend their whole life litigating? That's not why I got into football.
Yeah, I see.
Håvard, you were going to say?
For us, Johan, that lives in Norway, we have a really high trust society.
Very.
Of course, we are not agree with all the politicians all the time, but usually people are treating well here. We have good. So a lot of the people have good lives. Of course, we are like living in a whole different like society and also a whole different world than these people. So then is of course a lot of like culturally differences between us.
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah, well, and this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Johan.
no. But the point was just like you higher trust, you better economy, you better life, you better
Facts.
healthy system you have. You know what I mean? Because it's so many facets, you know, who follow with the trust. So it's a little bit like,
Okay.
yeah,
So Western civilization was built on Judeo-Christian traditions, which are high trust traditions. Okay, that's a fact. All right, whether people like to talk about it or not, we can go through the history of it. And that's one of the things, though, that these other cultures weren't built on those same systems. And we do have to learn how to navigate between the various cultures. And so in some cases, you might have a player that's from Africa, an agent that's from the United States, another agent that's from the UK, and a club that's in Dubai that are all now working toward a common goal, which is to get the player to play for the club in Dubai. But each culture brings their own, what I'm going to call ticks. They bring their own, they bring their own ideas about how deals are supposed to be done. And I've seen so many deals break down, even with people that I love. Okay. I have very good friends in Africa. All right. And some of them I love deeply. But I know that when it comes to certain moral issues, they are not going to behave the way that they should behave. When it comes to ethics, they're not going to behave the way they're supposed to behave. And I will literally say, you guys go do whatever you want. Don't attach my name to it. I can't be involved in this type of thing. And they get very angry at me and they'll go, oh, you think you're better because you're an American, or you think you're better because of it. No, I'm better because I have better morality and better ethics. I don't think it's okay to lie to people. I don't think it's okay to cheat people. I think that if you represent somebody, you have a moral obligation to give them all the information. I get yelled at all the time by people that I work with in Africa because I explain the rights of the players to the players. I explain to them that that manager who holds their registration has his interest and the player has his interest. You understand?
Yeah.
The club has representation, the player has representation. Not in Africa. They want the club to control the club and the player, and they want to take the money from both.
When it was back in 2010 and probably today too, and you look at players, you know what I mean? You talk about Guti there, you talk about other coaches who as well. But one thing I will ask you about is like, yeah, you took the chance and go there and saw some brilliant players back in 2010. But was it
Yes.
many scouters and agency who was like scouting around and trying to find players? Was
No. Back then, we were some of the trailblazers to do that.
Okay.
But now, like here, I just told Hobart this. Back in October and November across West Africa,
Yeah.
there were over 15 events that had over 200 clubs between them present.
Okay.
But let's be honest about what's happening, though. Okay,
Yeah.
and people don't want to hear this either.
No.
A lot of these guys that go to scout in Africa, they're not going to scout in Africa. They're going there to party in Africa and take advantage of the women there in Africa. So and that's a lot of what goes on. I know because I've been to these events, and it's a lot of partying, a lot more than there is good football. All right. So, and I don't go. So when I go to Africa to scout, I don't just go to Accra. This is what all these lazy guys do. And Johan, you probably know this, but most people that work in football are incredibly lazy. Okay. Yeah. The scouts are lazy. The sporting directors are lazy. They want everything wrapped in a bow and handed to them. And inside that package has to be a payoff for them. They expect a payoff. Like I can give you a story about a player named Akinkumi Amu, who was one of the best young players coming out of West Africa. And the scumbaggery and the theft that went on behind that kid is incredible.
Yeah, please tell the story. I'm listening.
No, Hobart, you were going to say?
Continue. I can ask you a question later. Just continue about Amu.
Yeah, and just so you know, I have all the evidence of all of this. So if anybody tries to contact you to tell you they're going to sue you or something, tell them to contact me because I have the evidence.
Okay.
So Akinkumi, I don't know if you ever saw Akinkumi Amu play. Okay, he's a young Nigerian boy. Played in the under-20 national team. One of my very good friends, who's a top guy, even though we don't always agree, top guy. He found this kid and he brought him to me and he said, Bob, we need to get this boy to England. All right.
Okay.
Now, at the time, I could not get him to England. We didn't have enough footage or information or any interest. And all of my contacts, because the first real deal I did in football was taking a player to Manchester City. So I started kind of at the top of the top. Where do you go from there? And we know how hard it is to get players into England, not just because of the paperwork, but also because of the level in England now. I mean, it is the best league in the world by a mile. So this Amu boy ended up going to the club of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, where there was a guy named Jesper who was the sporting director, okay? And at the same time, another guy was involved who you guys will all know. His name is Patrick Mork. So Patrick Mork and Jesper conspired to hide around 400,000 euros in monies from the player and from the people involved. Now, these deals, my partner got upset with me because I couldn't take him to England. So they did the deal without me in at Ibrahimovic's old club. All right. So I didn't look over any of the paperwork. So now we have the boy moving from Sweden to FC Copenhagen. Okay, this is around 2020. I can't remember the exact date. I'd have to look it up. But it was 2021 or 2022. So we're going to move him from there. Now, Mork had forced the boy to sign some paperwork that he shouldn't have signed. And Mork eventually, when he was an underage player, Mork eventually ended up being suspended for a year because of that. But I was brought in to facilitate and mediate the deal between 3 agents, 2 clubs, and a couple of family members. I had to fly to Copenhagen, where I met with Mork to try to work things out. And he actually brought a tough guy to try to muscle me, which was hilarious. I just laughed at him and told him, I just said, dude, you brought muscle to a meeting. Like, you're going to try to threaten me the moment I land in Copenhagen. This is how you bring people in. But what ended up happening, as I was negotiating the deal, found out another company was involved, and the paperwork was sent to me that showed that 400,000 euros was hidden. The player knew nothing about it, and the only people that knew about it was Patrick Mork and this Jesper guy. And the other guy, there was another guy, I think his name was Mikael or something, but I didn't deal with him at all. He might have known. But that ended up, nothing happens. The money just gets taken. The player doesn't get the money. Nobody does anything. There's no policing. Okay, I've never been a FIFA agent. I refuse to give FIFA jurisdiction over me. So I have agents that work for me. I negotiate deals. I scout players. I work out. And Hobart spent a lot of time with me. I'm very direct. It pisses off a lot of people. It makes a lot of people in football angry because I won't pay bribes. It won't happen. And I'm asked for bribes daily. I mentioned the boy that we took to Man City. It was a World Cup year.
What's the name of the player again?
Kelechi Iheanacho.
Kelechi Iheanacho. Yep.
Okay. And by the way, I have nothing bad to say about Kelechi. He did not. He did some things that I think were very bad things, but he was a young man who found himself in a situation where he made poor decisions. I still love the kid. We spent 2.5 years together. I still wish him the best. I follow him wherever he goes. And so I'm not trying to speak ill of him, but that was a boy that we took to Man City. Yeah. Go ahead.
And now he's actually playing in Celtic.
Yes, he's at Celtic, one of my favorite clubs, one of my boyhood. The first European football jersey I ever had was a Celtic football jersey.
Yeah, they're cool colors too. You know what I mean? Green and white. Yeah, that's nice.
And also the history of the club, the history with them and Rangers is incredible. I mean, it's one of the best stories in any sport, I think. But what I was going to say is, so when I was representing Kelechi, I received a phone call. Now, in our agreement, we would get a substantial bonus if Kelechi were to make it to the Nigerian World Cup squad. Okay.
Yeah.
That information was leaked by his father, all right, to people in the Football Association. So the people in the Football Association knew that if he got called to the national team for the World Cup, we would get some money. So they called me and asked me to come and meet them in person in Germany.
How much money was it? Yeah, you want to mention?
I don't know if contractually I might not be able to say that.
No,
but it was substantial.
It's substantial.
But
I understand.
I can tell you that.
I respect that.
I can tell you this. I had to skip one of my best friend's weddings to fly to Germany, to Nuremberg, to meet with the national team coaches who demanded that I pay them $150,000 to include him in their World Cup squad.
It's shitty.
And I told
you know,
them,
it's very when you hear it like that, you know, it's shitty.
no, it's horrible. And,
Yeah.
and again, under my country's law, okay, we have something called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Now, whether or not football officials are considered government officials, I don't think it's ever been determined. But if I were to pay a bribe like that, it could open me up to federal litigation, federal criminal sentences and convictions here in the United States. And so I won't do it. We won't do it. I also won't do it because it's unethical, and also because, to be honest, Kelechi was better than the strikers they had in the squad at that time. The boy should have been included on merit. And so we didn't do it. And at the time, Kelechi said, I agree, boss. Do not, whatever you do, pay them that money. They do not need that money. Now, if we were a corrupt agency, we would have taken that deal because we still would have made money on top of that, because what we were going to pay them was less than the amount we would make. But we refused to do it on principle. But principle has cost me tens of millions of dollars in football because there is no principle. I've only met, in all of football, I've only met 3 men that I trust.
Oh.
Yeah. In over 20 years.
That's few.
You mentioned a guy in football that you actually trusted.
One of the guys that I trust is now the sporting director at Bolton Wanderers. His name is Fergal Harkin. He was at Manchester City whenever Kelechi was there. We spent a lot of time together, and I have seen that man walk through the fire, and I have seen his character and his integrity. He's the kind of person you would trust with your kids. The other guy that I trust in football, well, my attorneys who represented me, they're fantastic people, the most trustworthy, the most honest, and compassionate in the way that they approach things. And then there were a couple other guys at there was one other man in particular, Man City, whose name I don't want to mention just because I just don't want to mention that, but he was a top man. And I have one guy in Africa who I know has never lied to me and would never lie to me. It's just not in his nature. And so, but other than that, everybody else in football that I've worked with has lied to me or misled me in some way or another when they had a moral obligation not to.
But you think football, you know what I mean? If you look at FIFA or UEFA, MLS or Spanish or African football, do you think it's a little better today and it was like 10, 15 years ago? Like, it seems like it's still worse, but you know what I mean? It's improving a little bit every year?
No, I actually think it's getting worse. So what I'll say is I think that since 2008 in Western civilization, we have seen a dramatic and rapid increase in the acceptance of corruption. Okay. We are becoming much more low trust societies. So as the West's trust evolves, corruption speeds up because there's nobody to keep these corrupt actors in check. And so whatever we see in culture in general is going to trickle down to all of our institutions, including football. And now you have American money that is in football, and Americans who generally contracts mattered. There are a lot of unscrupulous Americans who've been drawn into the world of football because they go, hey, crap, I don't need to follow the rules. The U.S. law doesn't function the same way. So I can go be a capitalist over here and be completely unrestrained. And because, again, we've removed God from our culture and we've removed trust, it's gotten worse. And it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, but we've seen it, Howard, in so many ways. Because we've seen in is it FIFA, the Blatter and everything, that we have that scene with all the money is going over him, you know, because of Saudi Arabic thing and things like that. So we see like small hints of it, you know, and people starting to waking up. So probably many of the things is 100% true. When we see,
but what happened with Sepp Blatter? But remember what happened? Do you know how Sepp Blatter got caught? It was the Americans that caught him, and then he ended up having everything overturned on appeal. So money protects you in the legal systems.
Yeah.
I know, I've worked in them. I'm a disruptor everywhere I go. Okay. I was a very prominent attorney. My background is an incredible background in terms of the things I was able to accomplish, but my entire life was upended whenever I took on the government in my local hometown. And so if you have money, it's very clear to me, if you have money, you get away with things. We just look, again, without being political, look at Hunter Biden, okay? The president, the son of the president. He bought a firearm even though he was a drug addict and he lied on the form. We have proof of that. And instead of him going to prison, if I did that, mandatory 5 years in prison, his father pardons him. We look at what's happening in Minnesota with the way the Somalis are stealing this money. Everybody, all the Democrats are protecting each other. And politics matters because politics is downstream of culture. You understand? And so we now see that corruption overall throughout the entire world. As we become more globalized, we become more homogenous in terms of our values. And Western values are eroding because of that. Go ahead, Hobart. Sorry.
Okay, Bob. Saudi Arabia has now, in just a couple of years, been like, they are competitive to the European top leagues now, of like salary transfers. What do you think about that? This country just sudden are something in football.
So it goes back to the point I was making, that money runs everything. So most people that get involved with, or most young people that come to me, and I have a lot of young players that I used to work with who now want to be managers, they want to be coaches, they want to be scouts, and they ask me, what is the key to success in football? And I say, guys, the key to success is to have deep pockets. You have to be rich. Because at one point, players like Osman, players like Isaac Success, I could name you 20 of the top players that came out of Nigeria that we saw first. But the bigger agencies started realizing we could spot talent, so they chased us around, and they would we would have a meeting. The family would say, "Come tomorrow, we're going to sign with you." The next day, they would show up, and they had received $50,000 or $100,000 from one of the top agencies, and then the people never talked to us again. So Saudi Arabia is just doing what everybody does. They're just buying legitimacy. And it's their money, so I have no problem with that. But the Saudi Arabian league is never going to be the Premier League. It's not going to be. And again, I have nothing against Saudi Arabia, but they're just throwing money at it. And football is run by money. It is not a meritocracy. Again, look at what Sir Alex Ferguson did. Whenever he helped his buddy, the agent, out and bought that player for, what was it, 7 or 14 million, that was the homeless player that played in like 4 matches for them. But Fergie and the agent and Fergie's son all got money from that deal.
But is one good thing here. Saudi Arabic can never be Old Trafford. And a stadium in Norway can never be San Francisco Giants in baseball. What I will mention with that is like the culture of baseball in America or football in England, if it's Anfield Road or White Hart Lane or Wembley or wherever Tottenham play on. The thing is like they can never be that kind of stadium, that kind of culture in the Saudi Arabic countries. Same as we in Norway, we can play baseball for fun, but we will never be New York Giants or wherever in baseball. You know what I mean? Because it's a culture thing that are in the blood of the American. I've been to a baseball match in America, when I was over there, and sitting there and eating Cracker Jack and wait for, you know what I mean, the home run thing. It was a cool thing, you know what I mean? It was like it was that experience, I mean, I don't give a fuck if New York wins or San Francisco. I just want to have the cool experience. And
exactly,
when I was looking at the thing, I was there. You can never take that thing and copy-paste it to a European country. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Go ahead, Hobart. Sorry.
The saddest thing, is just, like you said, football is run by money, of course. And this atmosphere, of course, you will, of course, have good players in Europe. But, of course, a lot of players and a lot of agents, they will just go for the money. And you see, that's why you can see in modern football today, so less like these club legends, that stay in the club their whole career. You never almost see this anymore now,
Well, that's
in modern football today.
what I was going to tell you, that, and this is what's changed so much in the last 15, 20 years, is it used to be people played for the shirt. They don't play for the shirt anymore. They don't play for the atmosphere. They don't play for the crowd. They pay for the paycheck so they can go home and post on Instagram how rich they are, or how many women they have, or how many cars they have. It's not about the sport at all. The sport has been fully and totally corrupted by money. Now, how do we change that? I don't think we can. The only thing we can do is try to hold people more accountable. Whenever we see people who are hiding, $400,000 in profits from their client, those people should go to jail.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just they should go in it, and if not go to jail, they should at least be removed from football for 10 years or something. But these, again, you're talking about, when we talk about Africa, and I love that. Listen, I will say a lot of things about the corruption in Africa. I love Africa. I love being in Ghana. I wish it was safe for me to be in Nigeria. I wish I could go to Nigeria and visit. One of my favorite foods is egusi soup, which is one of the Nigerian traditional soups. But we cannot change these things unless we all start holding everyone around us accountable. And nobody wants to do that in football because people want to keep getting the bag behind the back.
Yeah. I see.
And that's why probably also, Johan, that we are like caring so much about Norwegian football. Of course, you don't see these things often happen here, but of course, things are also changing here in Scandinavia and also about Norwegian football
Yeah.
as well.
You have some small cases the last 10 years that is little shady cases, you know what I mean? Between
Oh,
some,
there's more than a few shady cases.
yeah, but
there's more than a
yeah, I
few.
know, Bob, but things are coming up in, in the local CNN, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, Johan, one of the things is, so I've had the privilege of, and I do consider it a privilege, to meet some of the sporting directors in Norway during the last 6 months. And honestly, the men that I have met have been men of real character. They have been, I like the way the Norwegians approach things. They're very direct. They're very dry. It's been fantastic working with them. And I keep hoping no one's going to pull the rug out from under me like I've had happen before. I'm hoping that they are the men that they seem to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know agents. One of the top agents that works in your country is an absolute charlatan. He changes dates of birth all the time. He's involved in all sorts of shady deals in Nigeria. I mean, the idea that Norwegian football doesn't have its own warts is insane.
Which man are you talking about, Bob?
I'm not going to mention his name because I'll end up at war with him right away. And I'm going the type of war that I'm going to wage against him is
Well,
one
you
where
are probably talking one of the most famous one.
Yeah. Everybody knows it too.
Yeah.
Everybody, if you were to speak to anybody privately, off camera, off microphone, they would tell you, we know that guy's a cheat.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying between the lines.
Yeah. But I want to be careful because whenever I come for him, he won't see it.
I see. Yeah, that's a fun one. I remember a baseball match. I was in, I think it was 2007. Was it with the baseball player in San Francisco Giants called Bryce Harper or something? Bryce Harper.
Yeah, Harper. I don't know if he was with the Giants, but yeah, he's a big player.
Was he good?
I believe he was a good player. I don't follow American baseball. I'm going to be honest with you. I used to watch sports like it was religion. And after I got involved with football, I just started to dislike sports. Because remember, guys, we all played sports. Yeah. I'm sure every one of you has been on a championship team or a team fighting for a championship.
Yeah.
I've done it as a player. I've done it as a coach. And what I loved about it was the camaraderie, the spirit, the fight for the shirt, the fight for the teammates. And then when I ended up representing players that were at some of the top clubs in the world, and I got to see the way that the players interacted with each other, I literally saw, and I won't name names, but I saw 2 world-class international players who played for a big club call each other the worst possible names you could think of in front of the rest of the team, in one of their workout rooms, and everybody it was normal. It was every day. I was shocked. I was dismayed. I left the room. I was like, oh my God, did you hear what he just said to him? If somebody would have said that where I'm from, they'd have knocked his teeth out. And they were like, oh, it's like this every day. we aren't really friends. That was crazy to me. Now, again, that's my illusion. It destroyed the illusion for me. So I really don't watch sports very much. I don't. Only when I'm scouting younger players, and every once in a while when I feel like I really want to hate myself, I'll watch Manchester United if I really want to punish myself.
I see.
Yeah.
And you was also quite while in South America, Brazil, Bob. How was your time there?
So again, we started in 2009 in Brazil. I actually took a boy who was from Serbia to go to play in Brazil. He was one of the immigrant kids that I represented. That was in 2009 when I made that trip in October I told you about. We ended up finding one of the best young talents in Brazil during the 2009-2010 scouting trips. His name was Renier Luan Damasceno. We took him at 7 years old. We moved him and his family out of the favela, took him to Flamengo, where he started playing. Of course, 7, 8 years old, not a big deal, but we had this much belief in him. And the coaches that went with me, Phil Brogan from Man United was one of them. We ended up taking him to Santos at around 11 years old. When he came to sign, Pele came there. I got to meet Pele. That boy, we invested substantial amounts of money for him, moved his family out of the favela, put them in a beachfront condominium. And at 16, right when he was getting ready to sign his first major contract with the club, after everything we'd done for that family, after all the trips and all the years and all the money, they took millions of dollars from other agents and then attempted to have me, they had people come and threaten my life. And I was trapped in Brazil for almost a month, trying to make sure that I wasn't.
1 month.
1 month, yeah. No, in October and November of 2019, the FBI had to get involved. It was a very tumultuous time. That player, at the time this happened, his buyout clause was 120 million euros. So after I finally escaped and came home, of course, the pandemic happened, which destroyed the business in general because we weren't able to travel to see our players. I filed a lawsuit for over 500 million against Santos, the player, and 10 other parties that were involved, including major agencies. In fact, we have a hearing on the matter on the 7th here in the States.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, but football is filled with violence. I mean, in Africa, when we were doing the Kelechi deal, you can Google it. They kidnapped Kelechi. They literally kidnapped him. We had to hire a Nigerian warlord. We had to pay him money to contact the kidnappers and tell them if the boy wasn't returned, there would be consequences. This is football. People think football is just these guys go out on the field, kick the ball in the goal, pass around, make a save, whatever it is. But this is the real world of football. It's a battleground every day.
It seems like you miss being a youngster, you know what I mean? 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. You have a favorite team. You wish you get that suit for Christmas. You know what I mean? You just vote for one team, and you don't know shit about what happened between the fences. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It destroyed the illusion.
Yeah.
I have no illusion about football. And some people might say that I'm being far too cynical, but I'm not being nearly as cynical as I could be. Again, this is our first time speaking, getting to know each other. There are so many details that I could tell you that you would say, "Oh, that's just got to be a lie," and then I'd be able to show you physical evidence of that happening. We've had players whose parents literally threatened to hurt other kids in their family if we didn't give them more money, because then the player wouldn't be able to focus on playing because his little brother or sister was being beaten. Yeah. This kind of thing.
It's so many crazy stories in football, and it's so sad, you know. But I still, I also sometimes, you know, you just have to, in a way, push this aside in a way to just also try to actually
enjoy
it. Watch football and also still have love for the game, but it of course is difficult when you.
Johan, you raised the point about being 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I still have love for watching young players play. It is the process of watching them professionalize that breaks my heart, because as they're professionalizing, they end up losing their illusion as well, and they end up giving up on their dreams, and they just start chasing money. And it's how it is. It's the nature of the game. But I know I still, when I'm able to help a young player leave Africa or leave Brazil and travel abroad, to see that smile on their face, to see that recognition of real hope. Oh, I still live for that moment. There are only two reasons I'm still involved in football. No, three reasons. One is that I still live for that moment where I get to see somebody exist on hope, where they're breathing and bathing in hope. Like, that's the best feeling ever. It's like the Christmas morning feeling, you know? The other reason I stay in it is because I don't want to let evil win. I don't want to let this moral turpitude continue. And I know that I can't stop it. But if I can put certain people on blast in public about their behavior, some of the larger agencies, some of the guys like Patrick Mork, 100%, I want to do that. And I would love it if any one of them would attempt to sue me, so we can go through the discovery process and I can show the world exactly who and what they are. And the third reason is I've put a lot of time into football, and I don't want to give up that time. You know, there's an investment in my time, so I'm going to keep that investment going, even though it really is, it's a side project for me right now. I have a young man named Farido that was one of the boys we brought to the U.S. from Africa. He came here when he was 11. He lived with us for a year. He's like a son to me. He's one of the top young agents in West Africa, one of the top young scouts. And I'm trying to help steer him in the right direction, but I can see it on a daily basis, you know, because there is the pull between what I expect of him in terms of being a good young man and a good young professional, and the realities of African football, and him trying to navigate those up against what the real moral and ethical ideas are that he should be following.
Of course, also, Bob, we also kind of, I'm sure you also kind of love to be competitive. We don't like losing. It's also it's much more better to win, you know. And this is also a part of the football business. You will try to win as good as you can, you know. And this is also, you can also compare it to actually complete a deal.
So completing the deal for me isn't winning. And again, it is nice because you'll make a little bit of money, but I feel much more like a winner whenever I'm able to educate young people and help them protect themselves as they move forward. I get much more fulfillment out of that than I do signing a deal. Of course, I like to chase a deal. I like to negotiate, but I have other businesses where I do that. In football, the real win for me is stopping wicked people take advantage of young players. That is the real win for me. And you know, people might think, oh, listen to this altruistic jerk. You know, this guy's trying to act like he's on a moral high horse. Look, I'm a lot of things, and I've committed a lot of sins just like every other human being. But I will put my character in football up against anybody in the history of football. And it isn't really saying much because it's not too high of a bar.
I see. If you look at the positive way then, in Africa today, which countries have the best possibilities to succeed in the next 10 years, you think? Because of the culture, because of they had developed European system over...
level of the players.
One more time,
okay,
Howard?
And also about which country do you see like had most like talented players, and also a country that in Africa that can actually develop.
I think I understand the question.
So here's the problem, guys. The European model that has infected Ghana is infecting all of the other countries as well.
Okay.
So again, Nigeria is going to always turn out players because they have 260 million people.
Yeah, correct.
Ghana, I am afraid Ghana is going to keep getting worse because of, and I'm not talking about the leadership at the GFA level. I'm talking about the grassroots leadership. The grassroots leadership in Ghana is very, very poor. You know, you have all of these people, and I've been involved with some grassroots clubs. They'll tell you that they want to develop players, but then they're spending all of their time keeping track of how many games they win and lose and focusing on tactics rather than focusing on the personal development of the player. And because the kids are no longer playing 8 hours a day on the pitch, when you're training them, you need an hour of them just being on the ball. Like they need an hour of just running through different ways to turn, receive, to move, cutbacks, you know, just step overs, whatever it is, you need to put the fantasy back in the game. So when you ask me what nations, I don't see any. Now, there are some nations that are coming up. So Burkina Faso is getting a little bit better. Mali is getting a little bit better. But hopefully, once Ghana abandons the European model, which I think will happen in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, once that happens, Ghana will be back to being one of the best countries for football. It's literally in the DNA there. The best young players I've ever seen in Africa, West Africa, West and East, because I treat Northern Africa very differently. Like I don't. When we're having these discussions, I'm not thinking about Morocco or Egypt or Libya. I'm thinking about sub-Saharan Africa for the most part.
I see. They're more Arabic cultures.
Yeah. So because they have a very different culture, and I don't spend a lot of time there. Nothing against it. It's just not where I spend my time. So I'm praying that Ghana comes back to being one of the top developers of talent. But right now, you're going to find your better strikers in the Ivory Coast. You're going to find your bigger, faster, stronger players in Senegal. Kenya has some players that are coming up, but their body movements are a little more awkward. They're not quite as fluid as the West Africans in terms of their movements. Zambia, you'll see some players from time to time, but again, not the naturally athletic players that we see in West Africa. I'm hoping for a resurgence in Cameroon. I mean, honestly, where's the next Samuel Eto'o? Where is he? So I don't know if there's one specific place, Johan. I know that you might be looking for a more basic answer, but I think after speaking to me for an hour, you realize none of my answers are going to be simple.
I see. But probably it was a Samuel Eto'o after Samuel Eto'o, but it didn't take care of it. You know what I mean? And they didn't pick up the talent.
Well, I haven't. So I have really good connections in Cameroon through one of my partners. And I've seen a number of the top players that have come through Cameroon, and nobody even close to Samuel's level.
Okay.
Nobody.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
he was, and he was a generational talent, but you'd expect a generational talent every generation.
Yeah.
And now it's 20 years later, and we haven't seen another one.
I see.
I also have to ask you, Bob. Soon we're going to see the World Cup 2026 in your country,
Yes.
United States, and also in Canada and Mexico. Our nation, Norway, finally qualified.
Yeah, congratulations.
In almost like 30 years. It was a big...
it's 1,000 years ago. It was the last time.
We've been to World Cup. It feels like it, like almost like...
It never happened before, I will say.
What are your... you looking forward to the World Cup
No.
in the States?
No, I'm looking forward to my friends who will be coming from overseas that will come stay at my house, and we'll get to hang out together and spend time together. And I'll get to make fun of them when all of their teams lose, because I'm sure that FIFA will corrupt this World Cup the same way they corrupted the last World Cup. But I'm just looking forward to the atmosphere. I'm not looking forward to the matches, but international football doesn't have the same level of fight that it used to, again, because these guys are chasing money. They're not chasing glory. Now, I think Norway is actually going to have a real benefit, a real bonus in going to the World Cup this year, because I do believe, because you haven't been there in so long, that your players will die for the jersey. Okay. And I think that will give them a leg up on a lot of these other countries that just take it for granted that they belong in the World Cup. And by the way, you're both invited, because my house is right in the middle of New York, Philadelphia, DC. You're welcome. You're welcome to come and stay at my home. I have a log cabin home here in Pennsylvania. You guys are welcome. I have plenty of space to sleep.
There's maybe you have to save up some money, you know what I mean, and go over to overseas.
Well, you won't need it. You won't need to pay to sleep. You have plenty of food, plenty of drink, and a comfy place to put your head down.
Oh, that's nice.
Actually, a dream come true to watch the World Cup, Johan. So we need to start saving money now.
Yeah, but like he said, he gave it on the table here. Like we have a safe place to sleep, and maybe it can be.
Well, except for the bear, you just have to watch out for the bear in the yard. We've got a lot of wild animals around here.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm pretty sure Norway's playing in New Jersey.
I think so.
And Yeah, that stadium is an hour and 40 minutes from my house.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And you know, if you think about the hot and cold between Norway, you know, New Jersey is like similar Norwegian, I think, plus minus.
Well, at that time of the year, it's going to be very hot. It'll probably be around, I would say, 85 to 95 degrees. So
yeah,
very
but
warm.
that's like a hot Norwegian summer. So it's not
Okay,
like
okay.
so I will say it's you know, it's fair. It can be worse for the Norwegian team, you know.
Do you think, Bob, it's going to be difficult to actually get tickets for you as an American?
Well, what's happened now, and you might have seen that. I don't know if you're having the same problem in Europe that we have. Whenever Ticketmaster, whoever controls the tickets, is releasing them, you have all of these companies that have bots that then purchase those tickets and then they resell them. So right now, some of the prices for tickets are extravagant, but I think as we get closer to games, we'll be able to find them. And I'm sure we all have friends at various clubs that can help us get tickets if we need to get them.
A friend of a friend in a local bar gonna fix everything.
Yeah.
So it's
well,
not a problem.
one of our friends who owns a couple of Greek clubs, he owns a box with the Philadelphia Union. So I'm sure he'll be able to secure tickets in some way should we need them.
Yeah, it's very interesting to talk to you, Bob, and good to finally say hello to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to cover. We can always do it again if you have more specific questions. And I'm sorry to be so dour and dark, but
No.
I want so much for these young people who have talent and have little to no opportunity to be able to have opportunity to escape the poverty where they're trapped. And they generally don't, because of the people that work in football only see them as slave chattel. They don't see them as human beings. There's no compassion. There's no humanity brought to it. And I know I come across sometimes as very hard, but I love these young people. I want to help them. I want to do what I can, but they need education. And I have a lot of ideas of how to do this, but it's going to take a lot of people who work in football to get together and basically unionize against what essentially are 4 or 5 major agencies that run everything.
Yeah.
I think it's important now, you know, that we can actually have honest talks about the dark sides of football and also how it has become in a way. I think it's important that also listeners can hear this from a guy like you that's been in the business for a long time.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully we can chat again sometime. And Howard, of course, I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Johan, it was really nice to meet you. And again, Happy New Year to you. I hope you and your family are doing well, and that we'll all be able to get together in the summer for a World Cup match where we can watch Norway smash whoever they play.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And to you, listener, have a great week. The snow is coming, you know, the winter is coming to Norway. We talk next week. Bye-bye.
Har bare et ønske om en gave, og det var den jeg nettopp formulerte nå, at Rosenborg skal bli Rosenborg.
Dette er en av de vakreste skåringene på norsk jord noensinne. Han hamrer altså ballen i nettet på et brassespark, eller med sin venstre fot. Bevegelsen rundt han, bruker Patinama undergangen mot Salvesen!
Jo, fordi fotball heldigvis aldri kan bli matematikk. Fotball er synsing, fotball er ikke objektivitet på en rekke kontroversielle situasjoner.